Today, we're diving into a fascinating and kind of scary medical investigation. We're looking at a study that makes you question everything you thought you knew about some of the world's most common and most serious diseases.
Think about this for a second. What if the real root of a deadly illness isn't the illness at all? What if it's some hidden factor in our environment, a poison hiding in plain sight that we're not even testing for? That's the mystery we're getting into today. So our story starts with a problem that is, quite literally, hiding in plain sight. It's a huge and growing health threat that's affecting millions of people all over the world, and many of them have no idea what's truly making them sick. Millions and millions of people are suffering from really devastating conditions. Things like chronic liver disease, kidney failure, heart failure, strokes. And we usually chalk it up to lifestyle, genetics, or just plain bad luck. But a group of researchers started to suspect that something else was going on, something in the environment.
And at the heart of their suspicion is something called heavy metal toxicity. You see, researchers have flagged this as a massive global problem. Just think about it for a sec. All the pollutants from factories, from sewage, from pesticides, it all seeps into our soil and our water. And eventually it can work its way into our bodies where it can cause some serious damage.
So these researchers decided to focus their investigation on 4 key suspects. First on the list, lead. This is a notorious toxin that we spent decades trying to get out of our paint and gasoline, and for very, very good reason.
Suspect number 2 is nickel. You might know it from coins or maybe some jewelry, but it's also a big industrial pollutant, and at high levels it can cause way more than just a skin rash.
Third up, we have copper. Now, our bodies actually need a tiny amount of copper to work properly, but the line between helpful and harmful is razor thin. Too much, and it becomes a really potent toxin, especially for our internal organs.
And finally, there's manganese. Just like copper, it's an essential nutrient in small doses, but if you get too much of it, it's known to cause serious neurological issues. So those are 4 suspects. The question is, could they be the secret culprits we're looking for?
To figure that out, we need to turn to a specific study that happened in Lahore, Pakistan. This is where a team put this exact theory to the test. You see, over at Mayo Hospital in Lahore, a team of researchers had this strong suspicion. They were seeing all these patients come in with really severe heart, liver, and kidney diseases, and they started to wonder, could the city's well-known pollution problem be directly causing these illnesses?
Their plan was so simple, it was brilliant. They took 60 patients who were already being treated for these conditions. They collected blood samples, and then they tested those samples specifically for 4 metallic suspects: lead, nickel, copper, and manganese. The last step was to just connect the dots, to see if the poison they suspected in the environment was actually inside the patients.
While the results of that simple plan were anything but ordinary, what they found wasn't just a small connection, it was a truly shocking discovery that could change everything.
The results that came back from the lab, to say they were staggering is an understatement. There was just no way they could have been prepared for the sheer scale of what they were about to find.
The levels of heavy metals they found weren't just a little high. They weren't even double or triple. On average, they were 1,000 times higher than the accepted safe limits. Let that sink in. 1,000 times.
And to really get how massive this difference is, you have to look at how they measured it. The metals in the patient's blood were measured in parts per million. But the safe levels, those are measured in parts per billion. That's like the difference between a single drop of ink in a bathtub versus a single drop in an entire Olympic-sized swimming pool. It's a completely different reality.
And this table just shows you how extreme these numbers really were. Look at this. For patients with congestive cardiac failure, the nickel level was over 259 parts per million. The safe limit? It's less than 0.008. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around that difference. And you see the same crazy pattern for lead in heart patients and copper in kidney patients.
So we've got this absolutely shocking data. But that leads to the next big question. How? How exactly are these incredibly high levels of metal causing these specific diseases inside the human body?
Let's just focus on heart failure for a minute. This chart, which is based on the study's data, shows how nickel was just completely dominant in these patients. It's towering over everything else. But don't forget, lead and copper were also found at extremely toxic levels. The research explains that these metals aren't just passive. Lead is actually a known cofactor in heart failure, which means it helps the disease develop and get worse. Too much copper is directly tied to cardiovascular problems. Essentially, at these levels, the metals are triggering a constant state of low-grade war inside the body, something called chronic inflammation, which we know is a major driver of these diseases. So, all of this brings us to the most urgent part of the story. What are we supposed to do with this alarming information?
Well, the researchers themselves made a really powerful plea. They argue that it's just not enough anymore to do the routine medical tests. With findings like these, they say doctors absolutely need to start checking for heavy metal levels in patients with these chronic illnesses.
And what's the point of testing for it? Well, because there are treatments. The study points to something called chelation therapy, which is a medical procedure designed specifically to grab onto heavy metals and flush them out of your body. But it's pretty simple. If you don't test for the poison, you can't remove it.
So yeah, this was just one study in one hospital in one city, but its implications, they're global. It's a massive wake-up call. It forces us to look at the deep and often overlooked connection between the health of our environment and our own personal health.
And that really leaves us with a final, lingering question. It makes you wonder, what other hidden links are out there between our polluted world and our chronic diseases? Just how much is our environment secretly pulling the strings when it comes to our health?